Hello everyone, my name's Justin Luria and I'm going to talk about how we can tell if we are grounded or ungrounded. First thing to say is that everybody is both grounded and ungrounded. It's a spectrum, a continuum. Even if you consider yourself to be very grounded, it's likely there are elements of your personality or psyche or spirituality that are ungrounded. And likewise, if you consider yourself very ungrounded and in dire need of grounding help, it is likely that nonetheless there are parts of you which are grounded. So the question of am I grounded or am I ungrounded? Yes. The answer is yes, yes to both, always. The next thing we just need to get clear on is what grounding is. I will briefly say how I relate to grounding, which is that it's not the same thing as either earthing or centering. I consider centering to be coming into awareness of and contact with the present moment, the now, including your body in the now. And it's very important, very useful, very helpful, and for almost anything I can think of, I struggle to think of anything that this doesn't apply to. It's the first step. It's the foundation upon which you expand into all other things. But it's not the same thing as grounding, which I will say a few words about more in a moment. Earthing also has much more similarity with grounding, but isn't grounding. Earthing is similar in electronics when you earth a circuit. In the UK, our plugs have 3 pins, and the third one connects directly into the earth. So that if there's an electrical fault, the excess electricity goes into the earth rather than into your body. And the principle of earthing is kind of similar. It's that we are earthed. Our energy fields and also our physical bodies become earthed by being in contact with the earth. This is very beneficial. It replenishes us energetically and at a physical level restores us by I guess I would describe it as topping up the ions in the body. I'm not an expert on earthing, as even though I've made grounding my thing, I've not particularly looked into earthing. But so earthing is more on the physical level. Grounding is the emotional and psychological and spiritual aspects. It is how present you are in your body, how incarnated you are in your body, and also how deep your relationship to the earth goes. It's really common for us, particularly as Westerners, and so when we ask the question, am I ungrounded? For most Westerners in particular, yes, with these aspects. Most of us have, we're quite thinky. Even if at our heart we are emotional beings or quite willful and headstrong, which, funny turn of phrase, doesn't particularly imply being cognitive. But most of us have either at our nature or at least a veneer, which is applied by society. It's how we're taught to function by our schools, by society at large, which is that we are quite rationally centered and our energy around our head is quite thick. And when we have problems, we ruminate. We turn the same things over and over in our heads, and we daydream and think things through way more than is useful or efficient. And the effect of this is that our consciousness, our life force energy, instead of being evenly distributed through our bodies, is kind of around our heads more, like like a medieval painting of a saint with their halo. We all have these halos of thinking energy. And in addition to this, that's one aspect of an ungrounded energy. There's also the more fundamental aspects, the deeper spiritual, which is that for many of us, we have never fully come into our bodies. Either if we had a birth trauma, or just didn't have a good time whilst we were forming in the womb, or had a trauma soon after birth, or if there was a lot of pain or just general toxicity in the family of origin. Even things like past life wounds, if you're into that kind of thing, and ancestral inheritance can also be a factor in this, which is that even though we have agreed and chosen to come to life on earth and to come into this body, we don't fully do it. Part of us remains in spirit, and when we daydream or when we pursue our spiritual activities, we return to that part of us. We bring instead of bringing all of our consciousness down into the world, we take our consciousness up, and we rejoin. We kind of become one by rejoining our broader self, including the parts of us which are meant for this life, the individuated parts which ideally, and I say ideally, it's part of our spiritual path and our healing journey that all of us isn't united in one in this body. But we go up there, whether we're doing a meditation or pursuing a spiritual tradition or spiritual philosophy or practice which emphasizes this upward connection. It's like a very seventh chakra, third eye chakra, angelic, celestial, etheric, astral, out of body, all of these things which form the basis of most modern metaphysics and spiritual practice and so on. They inherently take us up. For material people, for material beings, that's so what's needed, and that's perfect. And for helping us awaken to our broader spirituality and connection with all of the universe and our deeper selves and the deeper spiritual truths and so on, that's also usually what's needed for us, even if we are ungrounded. But there comes a point when there's not much more good you can do by taking yourself upwards to that part of you which is in spirit. And the nature of your path shifts. And what then is needed is for you to come down, to bring all of that consciousness which is in the spirit realms, in the etheric frequencies, in the astral, the parts of you which are made for this life, to bring them all the way down into your body, into your legs, into your feet, all the way down to your tippy toes, and then continuing the journey into contact with and connection with the earth. That then is what's needed to allow the threads of consciousness to continue from spirit into matter. And that's what we're all here for. We are here to spiritualize matter, which we don't do by merely having a body and then spending all our time in a transcendent, uplifted state. We do it, that can be part of it, as a way of opening up, but then we bring what it is that we've connected to down into our bodies, physical bodies, and into the world at large, into our families, our friendships and relationships, into our place of work, into our town, our village, our culture, into the internet. I tried to bring it onto Facebook. This is the task of everybody, whether or not they know it. And everybody has their own challenges, their own difficulties. And if you are a person who as I like to call it, is grounding challenged, then it's the second half which is your challenge, the coming down, and you already have opened gifts. You already have your sensitivity and your creativity, your exquisite openness and fluency with the inner world, or however it is that you would describe it, whatever words you'd use. And our challenge is to bring that down. Okay, I'm going to talk now about what I actually made this video for. So some of the ways in which the resistance to this coming down can manifest, the symptoms of the birth traumas or the ancestral inheritance or the past life woundings, these other things that can interrupt and get in the way of grounding. It can show up in many ways. In the body, if you frequently have cold hands and cold feet, or other cold extremities, this is a big sign. It's a symptom of that your energy, instead of being nicely, evenly distributed and flowing, and also abundant and full throughout your whole body, it's pulled up, so it kind of pulls out of the hands, and it pulls out of the feet and out of the legs, and it is kind of in excess around your head and the upper chakras. And the consequence of that, that's just the typical pattern of being an overthinker or an overtly spiritual person in many ways. It withdraws and almost steals the energy which is meant for your whole body and for your whole life, and rediverts it into the mind and into the spiritual connection. And another aspect of that same thing is clumsiness. If you don't have much consciousness in your limbs, that's the same thing as saying not much awareness. It's the same thing as saying not much feeling. And the awareness, of course, is on many levels. So frequently you might collide door frames, so kind of, oops, or you walk past a table and you brush it or collide with it with your hits or your legs. You don't have a very good sense of where your body is, and even though you see your body, in relation to other objects or other people of the world. Typically also not having very good balance is related to the same thing, and also a fear of heights. The body psychotherapist and body psychologist Alexander Lowen wrote in Bioenergetics that if there's a split at the waist, a disconnection between the top half of the body and the bottom, it manifests as a fear of heights, so that the stability is not there. Anything else in the body? That's probably mostly it. Physically, low blood pressure often correlates. Not necessarily. I used to have low blood pressure. I don't anymore. Now that I've done a lot of my healing around the grounding. So, emotionally, the big thing is fear. When there's a lot of ungroundedness, the thing about not being grounded is fear. Fear to come into the body. That's the thing. I mean, it's fear rather than anger or some other thing. But it's not specific fear. It's deep terror, unnameable. It's not attached to a thing. It's not like the fear of heights. Fear of heights is the fear of a thing, or fear of spiders, or I'm terrified of crustaceans, crabs, things like that, lobsters. This kind of fear is existential, the fear of life, but it manifests in fear of humanity and fear of the world. So you may notice that you're quite an afraid person, and if you're walking down the street and someone else is walking down the street, maybe you need to cross the street and be on the other side of the street in order to feel safe. I've done that a lot. I don't anymore. Or I see a group of people, and before they're close enough that I can make out who they are, I fear the worst, and I almost assume that they're going to rob me or beat me up, um, or something like that. So there's this instinctive take that other people, perhaps not people you know well, could be that, although it could be that as well, but certainly strangers and people at large are not to be trusted and are potentially harmful and will hurt you. And this is a very deep fear, and it's important, and it's often so much running in the background of this fear that we don't think about it, apart from these moments where perhaps we have a moment of consciousness and clarity around this and think, why am I scared of this person? And you may see someone in the distance and be scared of them, and you get close and you realise it's a very sweet appearing person who obviously won't hurt you, and you think, oh, well, that was silly of me. And often it's only through those moments that we then get the insight into how pervasive this fear is. Or otherwise fear not necessarily of people, but of our body being wounded and injured and destroyed. Whether it's repetitive, intrusive thoughts and the worry that you might, as the old classic British example, be hit by a bus, or that I live in London, I go on the tube a lot, so worrying about falling onto the tube tracks and either being struck by the train or run over by a train, or worry again that other people will be injuring you. It doesn't have to be rational or logical, these kinds of fears. You may feel really squeamish and either repulsed by or really kind of, not obscenely, perversely attracted to images of surgery and woundings and even darker versions of that, like torture, for example, where the body is injured and broken and cut or otherwise worked with like that. And this kind of fear can live in the deep in the psyche, in the subconscious, and in cellular awareness. And that can be another aspect. It's both emotional and also physical. And if you notice that kind of fear crops up, you may feel yourself becoming cold or shivery, or even getting pins and needles if it's really extreme. So that's how I would relate to the emotional aspect of not being grounded. And then in the conscious mental and conscious spiritual, for us spiritual seekers, there's a very strong identification with yourself as a spiritual being, but not as a human being necessarily. So rather than feeling that you belong here on earth as a human being with a physical body, with physical needs for comfort and intimacy and food and nourishment and shelter and clothes, transport, all of the things that the infrastructure of life provides you, and through, although if you live in the city, perhaps aspects of these are very limited, with the social aspects even. But this is the fabric of human life. It's part of what we need. And if you identify much more with your spiritual aspects, your connection to spirit, the spiritual side of you, and it comes at the expense of your interest in your own humanity, or in the humanity of the world around you, the people you meet, or the world at large. This can be another example. I mean, it can get really much more specific than that, but for this video I don't want to get more specific. But as a rule of thumb, if you are more interested in, say, your own psychic development, rather than in your human development, your self-betterment, the enrichment of your life, of your capacity to be and to feel and to live joyfully and fully, things like that. Or if you are more interested in non-physical beings than physical beings, these are also good signs of ungrounded spirituality. And there's nothing at all wrong with the strength and breadth with which one can approach an interest in non-physical beings, psychic development, things like that. But it wants to be matched with an interest in the human and in the physical. This is having balance between heaven and earth, top and bottom. And it's not so much about shutting yourself down spiritually or anything like that. You keep all those wonderful things. You just expand your awareness to include the foundational, human, earthly side of yourself. And then you have a full experience of life. So this is the sort of thing I teach in my workshops about grounding and healing. And there are children outside. If you live in London or the UK, I teach a few times a year in London, and I will be offering online workshops and teleclasses, things like that. You're very welcome to get in contact with me and to see what's up in the world of grounding. The website for my teaching work, which is not just my own work, but also the teachers I had at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, and other of my colleagues who I know through there or through other channels, or my other teachers not from the Barbara Brennan School of Healing who I work with, is schooloferthmedicine.com, and my own private practice website for grounding, where I blog about grounding and write more exclusively about grounding rather than healing in general, is healingforgrounding.com. So, I wish you many blessings for your healing and grounding. Thank you for listening.